The Ghost of Ashwood Hall. Introduction. Hello, everyone. Before I dive into this chilling tale, I'd love for you to subscribe, share, and leave a comment below. Your support helps me bring more spooky stories like this one to life. Now, settle in, dim the lights, and let's begin the story of Emma and the Ghost of Ashwood Hall. The assignment. My name is Emma Thornton. I was 27 years old when this story began, living in Manchester and working as a junior journalist for a small online magazine, Northern Echoes. The job wasn't glamorous, mostly writing clickbait articles about local events or quirky cafes, but I loved digging into stories, chasing leads, and uncovering hidden truths. In my free time, I'd curl up with a mystery novel or sketch in my notebook, dreaming of one day breaking a big story that would make my name. One rainy October afternoon, my editor, Ms. Clara Bennett, called me into her cramped office. Clara was a no-nonsense woman with sharp cheekbones and a habit of tapping her pen when she was impatient. "Emma," she said, "I've got something different for you. A reader tipped us off about Ashwood Hall, an old estate near Blackthorn Village about 3 hours from here. It's been abandoned for decades, but there's talk of strange happenings, lights in the windows, voices in the woods. I want you to go there, poke around, and write a feature. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something. Either way, make it gripping." I blinked, surprised. "Me, alone?" I asked. Clara nodded. "You're sharp, Emma. You can handle it. Take photos, talk to the locals, and see what's what. Just don't come back with a boring story." I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. This was my chance to prove myself, but the idea of exploring an abandoned estate alone made my stomach twist. Still, I agreed, packed my camera, notebook, and a flashlight, and prepared for the trip. The journey to Blackthorn. The next morning, I boarded a train from Manchester Piccadilly. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, and a cold drizzle streaked the windows. As the city gave way to rolling hills and dense forests, I felt a strange sense of anticipation. At a small, deserted station, I switched to a rickety bus that rattled through narrow country lanes. A woman with a weathered face and a thick scarf sat across from me, clutching a basket of apples. She noticed the address on my notebook, Ashwood Hall, Blackthorn Village, and her eyes narrowed. "You're going to that place?" she asked, her voice low and rough. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Just for work, I'm writing a story." She leaned back, her lips tightening. "No one goes to Ashwood unless they're looking for trouble. That house, it's not right, you'll see." I tried to laugh it off, asking what she meant, but she shook her head and turned to the window. "Just be careful, girl. Some things don't want to be found." Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I brushed it off as village superstition. By late afternoon, I arrived in Blackthorn Village, a sleepy cluster of stone cottages near a misty valley. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine. I checked into the only inn, a creaky building called the Blackthorn Arms. The innkeeper, a stout man named Mr. Grayson, handed me a key to a small room upstairs. "You're here for Ashwood, aren't you?" he said, his eyes wary. I nodded, and he sighed. "Mind yourself out there." The hall's been empty since the 1940s, but folks say it's never truly empty. I thanked him, unsure whether to take him seriously, and settled into my room, where I dreamed of flickering lights and a distant voice calling my name. The first visit to Ashwood Hall. The next morning, I set out for Ashwood Hall. The village was quiet, with villagers casting curious glances as I passed. A narrow path led through the woods, where bare branches twisted like skeletal fingers. After an hour's walk, I reached the estate. Ashwood Hall loomed ahead, a sprawling Georgian mansion with ivy-choked walls and broken windows. Its stone facade was weathered, and the iron gates hung crookedly on their hinges. Beyond the house, a foggy valley stretched into the distance, dotted with gnarled trees. I pushed open the gate, its screech echoing in the stillness. My boots crunched on the gravel path as I approached the front door, which was slightly ajar. My heart pounded, but I reminded myself I was here for a story, nothing more. Inside, the air was cold and musty, thick with the smell of mildew. Dust coated the grand staircase, and cobwebs draped the chandelier. I snapped photos, the flash illuminating faded portraits and chipped furniture. In the library, I found shelves of moldering books and a desk piled with letters. My job was to find anything noteworthy, so I began sorting through the papers. Most were mundane bills, invitations, and old ledgers, but one caught my eye. A letter dated 1942, addressed to Margaret. It mentioned a tragedy and the boy in the valley. My curiosity piqued, but before I could read more, I heard a sound. a soft, deliberate creak from upstairs, like footsteps on old floorboards. I froze, my flashlight beam darting to the ceiling. The sound came again, slow and measured. Creak, creak. "It's just the house settling," I whispered, but my voice trembled. I grabbed my camera and climbed the stairs, each step groaning under my weight. The upper hallway was dark, lined with closed doors. At the far end, one door was slightly open, revealing a sliver of gray light. I approached, my breath shallow, and pushed it open. Inside was a nursery with a small crib, a rocking horse, and faded wallpaper patterned with stars. Everything was covered in dust, untouched for decades. But the rocking horse was moving, swaying gently back and forth. No breeze stirred the room. My skin prickled. I backed away, my flashlight shaking, and hurried downstairs. Outside, the fog had thickened, obscuring the path back to the village. I decided to return the next day. I wasn't ready to stay in the house after dark. As I left, I glanced back and saw a figure in an upstairs window, a woman in a long, dark dress, her face pale and indistinct. I blinked, and she was gone. My heart raced as I hurried back to the inn, telling myself it was a trick of the light. The village's secrets. That evening at the Blackthorn Arms, I asked Mr. Grayson about the house. He hesitated, then leaned close. "Ashwood Hall belonged to the Langley family," he said. "In the 1940s, there was a governess named Margaret Hale. She cared for the family's young son, Thomas. One night, the boy wandered into the valley during a storm and never came back. They found his body in the river, drowned. Margaret was devastated. Some say she went mad with grief and threw herself from the hall's tower. Now folks claim her ghost lingers, searching for Thomas. And when she appears," he paused, his eyes dark, "bad things happen." I swallowed hard, thinking of the woman in the window. "Have others seen her?" I asked. Mr. Grayson nodded. "A few, hikers mostly. One man, a surveyor, saw her years ago. The next day his son fell ill and died. People avoid Ashwood now." I thanked him and went to my room, where sleep came fitfully, haunted by dreams of a woman's voice calling, "Thomas, where are you?" Return to Ashwood. The next morning I returned to Ashwood Hall, determined to finish my research. The fog was lighter, but the air felt heavier, as if the house itself was watching me. I resumed sorting through the library's papers, finding more letters about Margaret and Thomas. One, written by the boy's mother, blamed Margaret for his death, calling her careless and unfit. Another was a diary page in Margaret's handwriting, scrawled with desperation. "I hear him in the valley. I must find him. I cannot rest." As dusk approached, I heard the creak again, louder, closer, coming from the hallway. I grabbed my flashlight and followed the sound, my pulse racing. It led me to the nursery door, which was now wide open. Inside, the rocking horse was still, but a child's toy, a wooden soldier, was lying on the floor far from its shelf. I hadn't touched it. My breath caught as a cold breeze brushed my neck, though the windows were closed. Then I heard it, a soft, mournful sob like a child crying. It came from outside, echoing across the valley. I ran to the window, peering into the fog. The cry grew louder, desperate, and I saw a small shape moving in the distance, a boy no older than 6 in old-fashioned clothes. He vanished into the mist. My hands shook as I backed away, bumping into the rocking horse, which began to sway again. Creak, creak. I fled the nursery, locking the door behind me, but the crying followed, now inside the house. It seemed to come from everywhere, above, below, behind the walls. I stumbled downstairs, clutching my notebook, and hid in the library, piling furniture against the door. The crying stopped, but the silence was worse, thick with anticipation. I stayed there until dawn, too terrified to move. The final night. I returned to the inn, shaken but determined to finish my story. Mr. Grayson noticed my pale face and pressed a key into my hand. "This opens the tower room," he said. "If you're going back, you might need it. But Emma, don't stay after dark." I nodded, unsure why I felt compelled to return, but something in me needed answers. That afternoon, I went back to Ashwood Hall. The sky was bruised with storm clouds and thunder rumbled in the distance. I worked quickly, photographing every document I could find. As night fell, I climbed to the tower, the key heavy in my pocket. The door was rusted, but it opened with a groan. Inside was a small, circular room with a single window. On the floor lay a faded shawl, embroidered with the initials M.H., Margaret Hale. A gust of wind slammed the door shut, and the room grew ice cold. The crying started again, now a piercing wail, and the shawl lifted from the floor, floating as if held by invisible hands. I backed against the wall, my flashlight flickering. In the window's reflection, I saw her, Margaret, her face gaunt, her eyes burning with grief and rage. She pointed at me, her lips moving soundlessly. "You took him." I screamed, dropping the flashlight, and ran for the door. It wouldn't open. The wailing grew deafening, and the air felt suffocating, as if the house itself was closing in. I pounded on the door, tears streaming down my face until it finally gave way. I stumbled down the stairs, out of the house, and into the storm. Lightning illuminated the valley, and for a moment I saw them both, Margaret and a small boy, hand in hand, staring at me from the fog. The aftermath. I made it back to Blackthorn Village, soaked and trembling. I sent my photos and notes to Clara, who published the story as The Haunting of Ashwood Hall. It went viral, but I took no pride in it. I left Northern Echoes soon after, unable to shake the memory of Margaret's eyes or the boy's cry. I moved to London, hopping distance would help me forget. 2 years later, I was engaged to a kind man named James. We were happy, planning a life together. One evening, we took a walk in Hyde Park, the air warm with spring. James pushed a stroller with his nephew, Charlie, who giggled at the ducks. I smiled, feeling safe for the first time in years. Then I saw her. Margaret stood by a willow tree, her dark dress stark against the green. Her eyes locked on mine, filled with the same hatred I'd seen at Ashwood. I froze, unable to speak. Charlie laughed, pointing at something in the water. James turned to look, and the stroller rolled forward toward the pond. I screamed, lunging for it, but it tipped into the water. Bystanders rushed to help, pulling Charlie out, coughing but alive. James held him, shaken, and I looked back at the tree. Margaret was gone. I never saw her again, but I know she's still out there, tied to her grief, her loss. Ashwood Hall is empty now, boarded up, but I wonder if she walks its halls, searching for her boy. And I wonder if she'll ever forgive the world for taking him. Closing. That's the story of Ashwood Hall, a place where the past never truly dies. If you enjoyed this tale, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Let me know in the comments if you've ever encountered something unexplainable. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.